There's a certain kind of person who walks into a room and says almost nothing, and yet somehow they seem to understand everything happening inside it. You've probably met someone like this. Maybe you are someone like this. Quiet in group settings, but with a mind that never stops moving underneath the surface. Society usually praises the loud, the quick, the confident. But psychology has quietly discovered something different, that some of the deepest minds hide in plain sight, disguised as ordinary people. And what's stranger, these people often don't know they're different. They just feel it. A quiet weight, a distance, a sense of seeing the world from one step behind the glass. Over the next few minutes, we'll uncover 6 silent traits that reveal an unusually deep mind. And by the end, you might recognize something you've never been able to put into words about yourself. Because the first trait isn't intelligence, it isn't even curiosity. It's something much stranger, and it starts with silence. Most people speak to think. Deep-minded people think to speak. There's a small delay in their responses, not because they're slow, but because they're listening to themselves first. Neuroscientists call this activity the default mode network, the part of the brain that lights up when we turn inward, when we imagine, remember, and reflect. In deep minds, this network doesn't switch off easily. It hums in the background of every conversation, every meeting, every quiet walk home. That's why when they finally speak, their words often feel heavier, as if they've already lived them in silence long before saying them out loud. There's a second trait, and it's easy to miss. Deep-minded people notice things other people walk past. A shift in someone's tone, a hesitation before a smile, the way a room suddenly feels colder. Psychologists call this high perceptual sensitivity. Their nervous system doesn't just process the world, it absorbs it, sometimes more than they'd like. That's why crowded places tire them faster than others. It's not that they dislike people, it's that they're quietly reading everyone at once. And if you've ever come home from a normal day feeling strangely exhausted, without knowing why, this trait might already live inside you. The third trait is one many people carry silently. Long after a conversation ends, deep-minded people are still inside it, analyzing, wondering, editing what they said. Psychology has a word for this loop: rumination. It's the mind's way of trying to solve something emotional through logic. But often, it only tightens the knot. The strange part is that this isn't a flaw. It's the same trait that makes them empathetic, thoughtful, and unusually careful with the feelings of others. But left unchecked, it can turn the mind into a room that never turns off its lights. The fourth trait quietly shapes their entire social life. Small talk drains them, not because they're arrogant, but because their mind is wired for depth, not surface. Ask them how's the weather, and they'll answer politely. Ask them, what's something you can't stop thinking about lately? And watch their entire face come alive. Behavioral psychology suggests deep thinkers experience what's called cognitive hunger, a craving for meaning that shallow interaction can't feed. That's why they often feel loneliest in crowded rooms, and most alive in a quiet conversation with one person who actually listens. The fifth trait is almost invisible from the outside. Deep-minded people tend to feel other people's emotions before those people even know they're feeling them. Researchers describe this as emotional contagion, the tendency of one person's inner state to quietly transfer into another's nervous system. For deep minds, this happens constantly. They walk into rooms and pick up moods like antennas picking up signals in the air. It's a gift, but also a weight, because sometimes they carry emotions that were never theirs to begin with. And finally, the sixth trait, the one that ties every other trait together. Deep-minded people have an unusual relationship with time itself. They think about the past longer than they should. They rehearse the future more than they need to. And in between, they search endlessly for the present. Psychologists sometimes call this temporal dispersion, a mind that lives across 3 timelines at once. Rich in insight, but often tired of its own weight. That's why they often journal, walk alone, or stare out windows longer than others. It's not sadness. It's the mind slowly organizing everything it's been quietly collecting. But here's what most people never realize about a deep mind. It isn't loud. It isn't obvious. It rarely announces itself. It hides inside quiet people who feel too much, notice too much, and think far more than they ever say. And if any of these 6 traits felt uncomfortably familiar, it's not a coincidence. It might simply mean your mind has been carrying more than you've ever admitted to yourself. Maybe the deepest minds aren't the ones with the most answers. Maybe they're the ones brave enough to keep sitting with the questions. So here's something to leave with. Out of these 6 traits, which one felt the most like looking into a mirror you'd been avoiding? Share it in the comments. Someone else reading might finally feel less alone. If this video reached somewhere quiet inside you, consider subscribing. There's more of this waiting. Soft, honest, and slow enough to actually hear. And next time, we'll open a stranger door. The psychology of people who feel most like themselves when they're completely alone. You may not want to miss what happens behind that one.